Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into what is honestly one of the most massive, high-stakes corporate transformations we've ever seen. Look, we all know Microsoft, right? For decades, they were the absolute kings of the PC software monopoly. They basically ruled the world with Windows and Office. But that's really not the core of their business anymore. Under Satya Nadella, they've completely morphed into this overarching cloud and AI operating system for entire companies. We're watching them make this colossal pivot from delivering legacy, low-cost software to trying to become the ultimate AI infrastructure powerhouse. It's a fascinating shift, and we're going to break down the exact financial and strategic logic behind it. And that brings us right to the central tension of the whole thing. You see, the old software model, it was practically a money printer. Once you built the software, copying it and distributing it cost basically nothing. The margins were off the charts. But AI? AI is a totally different beast. It is incredibly hungry. It requires these massive data centers, thousands of GPUs, insane amounts of energy. So the defining question right now, the one Wall Street is absolutely obsessing over, is whether Microsoft can actually maintain those legendary profit margins while making this incredibly compute-heavy pivot. Are they just burning billions on flashy demos, or can they actually turn expensive AI compute into high-retention, high-margin revenue? Okay, let's dive into this. We're going to break this down much like a top-tier hedge fund research note. First, we'll establish our core framework, the factory and the shelf. Then, we'll analyze Azure's marginal profitability. Third, we're cracking the code on Copilot monetization. Fourth, we'll map out Microsoft's value engine. And finally, we'll tackle the real risks to their moat. Starting with Section 1, the factory and the shelf. Now, to really wrap our heads around the scale of Microsoft's strategy here, we need to strip away the technical jargon. The easiest way to understand modern Microsoft is to picture a massive, heavy-duty manufacturing operation. Think of Azure, their cloud computing platform, as the factory. This is the industrial plant. It's packed with GPUs, servers, massive cooling systems, and its job is producing the raw, incredibly expensive AI computing power. Now, on the other side of that, you have Copilot. Copilot is the product shelf. It is exactly where Microsoft packages up that raw, factory-produced power into slick, paid productivity tools that everyday enterprise users actually click on. Like having AI baked right into Word, or Excel, or GitHub. The absolutely crucial thing to keep in mind here is that if the factory produces all this power, but the shelf can't sell it efficiently, well, the entire system breaks down. Moving to Section 2, Azure's marginal profitability. Let's look under the hood of the factory side using the highly anticipated fiscal Q3 2026 data. So in fiscal Q3 2026, Microsoft's Intelligent Cloud segment, which is where Azure lives, reported $34.7 billion in revenue. Just let the sheer scale of that baseline sink in for a second. $34.7 billion. In a single quarter, their cloud factory is pulling in the kind of revenue that most Fortune 500 companies take years and years to achieve. Total Microsoft Cloud revenue was up 29% year over year, and Azure specifically was growing at 40%. The demand for what this factory is pumping out is completely undeniable. But, as you probably know, headline revenue only tells half the story. Now, what's really interesting here is the specific metric, 33.5%. We can't just ask how fast Azure is growing. The true test of this whole AI pivot is the incremental operating margin on the next dollar of revenue. Look at the Q3 2026 results. Intelligent Cloud revenue jumped by about $7.9 billion year over year. In that exact same period, operating income for the segment increased by roughly $2.7 billion. If you do the math, that gives us an incremental operating margin of about 33.5%. Meaning for every single new dollar of cloud and AI revenue they brought through the door, they kept 33.5 cents in operating profit. That is still incredibly profitable, sure, but it also proves that AI infrastructure is extremely capital heavy. And this perfectly illustrates the delicate balancing act Microsoft is trying to pull off, often called the Azure margin bridge. There are basically 5 moving parts dictating whether this massive factory actually stays profitable. First up, utilization. Can they keep these wildly expensive AI clusters running nonstop? Second, mix. Are they selling high-margin software services, or are they just acting as a low-margin middleman reselling infrastructure? Third is depreciation. How fast does all this shiny new AI hardware become completely obsolete? Fourth, model efficiency. Is the actual cost to run an AI task getting cheaper over time? And fifth, pricing power. Are customers willing to pay top dollar for it? The bull case here is that AI compute becomes like cloud storage, massive upfront costs, but eventually unit costs fall and the profits are huge. The bear case?
it turns into the airline business. Super expensive planes, massive fixed costs, and absolutely terrible margins.
Let's shift to section 3, cracking Copilot monetization. The factory is humming, margins are holding for now, so let's shift our focus over to the product shelf. How do they actually sell this to users? To truly understand the shelf, we have to define a crucial concept, the Copilot monetization rate. Listen, monetizing Copilot isn't just about slapping a $30 price tag on a feature and calling it a day. It's a mathematical equation. It is the product of paid seats, multiplied by active usage, multiplied by the price per seat, multiplied by retention. This formula is literally the ultimate test of Microsoft's entire application layer thesis. And Wall Street is obsessively tracking this 4-part monetization scorecard right now. Step 1, paid seats attached. Basically, what percentage of eligible Microsoft 365 or GitHub users are actually swiping their cards to add Copilot? Step 2, active usage frequency. This one is huge. Are they just buying a license because it sounds cool, or are they genuinely using it every single day? A flashy demo is useless. Deep, daily integration into a workflow is everything. Step 3, price per seat. Can Microsoft actually hold the line on premium pricing? And step 4, customer retention. When that contract is up, do they renew, or did they realize the AI didn't actually save them enough time to justify the cost? So the crucial point we keep coming back to is the fundamental economic difference. Classic Office software had extraordinary margins because Word and Excel had basically zero incremental delivery cost. You download it, you use it, Microsoft pays nothing extra. But Copilot has a real, tangible inference cost. Every single time an employee prompts Copilot to summarize an email chain or draft a report, servers back at the Azure factory have to literally spin up and burn compute power. Because every useful AI answer costs Microsoft hard cash, they desperately need one of 3 things: incredibly high pricing, massive usage efficiency, or such undeniable slam-dunk productivity proof that customers will happily swallow higher seat prices without a second thought. All right, section 4, Microsoft's value engine. We know the factory, we know the shelf. Now how does the market actually value this incredibly complex, layered machine? You see, Microsoft's moat isn't built on one single product. It's about the staggering cost of replacing their entire system. They have 6 distinct revenue engines that perfectly highlight the sheer breadth of their enterprise dominance. Engine 1 is M365. Copilot directly increases the average revenue per user here. Engine 2 is Azure, where the AI boom drives massive compute demand. Engine 3, hybrid cloud, bridges the gap for older, slower enterprises and locks them into the ecosystem. Engine 4 is GitHub, honestly probably the clearest example of paid AI productivity out there right now because a coding assistant has an output you can easily measure. Engine 5 is security, a total natural fit since AI is perfectly suited to help overwhelmed teams handle threat responses and identity protection. And Engine 6 includes Windows and gaming, which gives them massive consumer reach and optionality. If a company wants to replace Microsoft, they essentially have to rip out and replace all of this at the exact same time. Good luck with that. But because of this massive multi-engine structure, there's a pretty fierce valuation debate playing out on Wall Street right now. Simply slapping a generic mega-cap tech multiple on Microsoft is the wrong way to look at it. The smarter framework separates out the underlying businesses. The core debate comes down to this: how much of Copilot's revenue deserved a premium, high-margin software multiple, and how much of it should really be treated as compute resale revenue? Finally, Section 5, risks to the moat. Look, as dominant as this whole platform is, no transformation of this sheer magnitude is a guaranteed sure thing. We have to be brutally realistic about the severe challenges that could completely derail Microsoft's thesis here. First, there's AI Capex overbuild. If they construct too many of these massive data centers ahead of actual demand, the staggering depreciation costs will absolutely crush their margins. Second, Copilot ROI disappointment. If enterprise customers don't see their employees getting materially faster or better, they're going to drop those expensive AI seats instantly. Third is model commoditization. If open source AI models become just as smart as the premium ones, Microsoft loses all its pricing power on the application side. Fourth, you've got fierce cloud price competition from heavyweights like AWS and Google Cloud. And lastly, OpenAI dependence. Microsoft leans incredibly heavily on OpenAI's models, and that creates some very unique product roadmap and governance risks that are somewhat out of their direct control. Which brings us right to our final thought. The AI thesis for Microsoft clearly has two halves: Azure the factory and Copilot the shelf. If Azure's incremental margins stay healthy despite the crazy hardware costs, and if Copilot attach rates keep climbing across the enterprise world, a truly fascinating reality starts to emerge. As this whole revolution unfolds, I'll leave you with this to ponder. Is Microsoft simply participating in the AI wave, or have they engineered a brilliant system where they are successfully monetizing AI twice, once at the infrastructure layer and then again at the application layer? Thanks for joining me on this explainer.